Introduction to Avelia. In the heart of the ancient world, nestled between towering mountains that seemed to touch the heavens and crystal-clear rivers that meandered through lush green valleys, there existed a magical kingdom known as Avelia. This land, filled with vibrant plant life and thriving animals, was a place of harmony and enchantment. The people of Avelia lived in perfect balance with the magical forces that surrounded them. They used their magic to enhance daily life, making their world a place of wonder, peace, and prosperity. The beauty of Avelia was not only in its scenery but in the spirit of its people who cherished their connection to the forces of nature and the universe. At the heart of Avelia stood its magnificent palace, a towering structure that shimmered with the power of magic and the wealth of the kingdom. King Ola, the ruler of Avelia, was a wise and fair monarch beloved by his people. His reign had brought peace and prosperity to the kingdom, and his people flourished under his just rule. However, King Ola carried a heavy burden, one that gnawed at his heart despite the outward perfection of his kingdom. The King's Dilemma. Though King Ola was admired and respected by all, a dark cloud loomed over his happiness. He had been blessed with many years of success and peace, but there was one prophecy that weighed heavily on his mind. An ancient prediction had been passed down through generations, a foretelling that had caused great unease in the royal court. It was said that if the king's firstborn child was a daughter, a great disaster would befall Avelia, bringing ruin and chaos to the once thriving land. The prophecy had haunted King Ola ever since he was a young man. He loved his kingdom deeply and was determined to protect it, but the thought of a daughter inheriting the throne filled him with dread. Avelia, a land built on magical traditions and ancient bloodlines, could not afford to see its future in the hands of a woman. The prophecy spoke of an unimaginable destruction, and the king could not allow that to happen. The quest for a male heir. In his desperation, King Ola turned to the kingdom's most learned scholars and wise sages, seeking any way to avoid the dreadful prophecy. He consulted mystics, ancient texts, and seers who had studied the kingdom's history and magic for centuries. After much searching, they uncovered a long-lost ritual, an ancient and sacred spell said to guarantee the birth of a male heir to the throne. The ritual, however, was not without its challenges. The spell required the use of something very special, King Ola's middle name. It was said that the gods themselves had bestowed a sacred name upon the king when he was born, a name that carried great power and meaning. If this name were spoken aloud, the ritual would ensure that the next child born would be a boy. However, there was a significant obstacle. King Ola could not remember his middle name. It had been a closely guarded secret, one that had been kept from him since birth. His parents had never uttered the name, ensuring that it remained hidden and protected. The Great Gathering Announcement. Frustrated and desperate, King Ola made a bold decision. He proclaimed that he would host a grand gathering at the palace, where anyone from across Avelia could come and try to guess his secret middle name. The king announced that the person who successfully guessed his name would be honored as the hero of the kingdom and would play a crucial role in securing Avelia's future. The announcement spread like wildfire across the kingdom. People from every village, no matter how remote, began preparing for the grand event. The idea that someone could uncover the king's hidden name and change the course of Avelia's future was a thrilling challenge, one that sparked the imagination of the entire kingdom. This gathering would be no ordinary event, it would be a battle of wits and determination that could shape the fate of Avelia for generations to come. As the day of the great gathering drew closer, King Ola's heart grew heavier with worry. Would anyone be able to guess his middle name? What would happen if no one succeeded? The kingdom's future, and his own legacy, seemed to hang in the balance. He had never felt so uncertain, even with all the power and wisdom he had accumulated over the years. Little did King Ola know, however, that the fate of Avelia would not be decided by mere guesses alone. Something far more extraordinary and magical was about to unfold, a destiny that would change the kingdom forever. Ria's tragic past. Rhea's life had been marked by sorrow from the very beginning. Often at a young age, she had lost both of her parents in a tragic accident, leaving her with no one to care for her. Her childhood was filled with longing, as she felt a deep void where the love of her parents should have been. Despite this, she was taken in by her aunt, Lyra, a woman who had 3 children of her own, twins, Rowan and Willow, and a younger son, Ash. Lyra, though kind in her own way, never quite filled the void Rhea felt inside. Rhea tried to settle into her new life, surrounded by the love of her adoptive cousins. Rowan, Willow, and Ash accepted her with open arms, but there was always a sense of separation. Rhea could not shake the feeling that there was something more for her in the world, a greater destiny that awaited her. She often dreamed of a life far beyond the confines of a small village, of royalty, power, and a purpose that seemed so close, yet so distant. Though Lyra did her best to care for Rhea, the emptiness in her heart never truly healed. Rhea was grateful for the love she received, but she couldn't ignore the feeling that she was destined for something greater than this humble life. Rhea's strange dreams. One night, Rhea had the most vivid dream she had ever experienced. In this dream, she was no longer the orphan girl wandering through life. Instead, she was standing in the grand throne room of Avelia's palace, wearing a golden crown upon her head and regal royal robes that shimmered in the light. As she stood tall and proud, holding a scepter, she could feel the power of the kingdom flowing through her. She was the queen of Avelia. The dream was so real, so vivid, that Rhea could smell the rich fragrance of flowers in the royal gardens and hear the sounds of the court bustling around her. In her dream, she ruled over Avelia with wisdom and compassion, loved by her people and admired by all. It was a life so far removed from the one she had known, and yet it felt like it was meant for her. As the dreams continued night after night, Rhea began to wonder, could these dreams be a sign? Were they trying to tell her something about her future? Was she somehow connected to Avelia's royal bloodline, and did these dreams have anything to do with the king's desperate need for an heir? She could not shake the feeling that these dreams were far more than simple fantasies, they were calling her towards something extraordinary. The proclamation reaches Rhea. As word spread across Avelia about King Ola's proclamation that a grand gathering would be held at the palace for anyone who could guess his elusive middle name, Rhea's curiosity deepened. She overheard villagers gossiping about the great honor that awaited the one who could guess the king's name. Whoever succeeded would play a vital role in securing the future of Avelia and could even become the one to provide the next royal heir. Rhea couldn't help but wonder if her destiny was tied to this event. Could her dreams of ruling Avelia somehow be connected to King Ola's desperate need for a male heir? She felt an inexplicable pull toward the gathering, as if fate itself were guiding her steps. Perhaps, Rhea thought, she was meant to help the king fulfill the prophecy and ensure the kingdom's survival. However, her adoptive mother, Lyra, saw the gathering as an opportunity for her own children, Rowan, Willow, and Ash, to gain the honor and glory that came with guessing the king's name. Lyra had always dreamed of her own children becoming royalty, and the thought of Rhea, her orphan niece, potentially being involved in such a grand event filled her with jealousy. Lyra began to see Rhea's dreams not as a sign of destiny, but as a threat to her own ambitions for her children. Tension builds in the family. As the days passed, Lyra's jealousy grew. She had always been a determined and ambitious woman, but now her jealousy was consuming her. The idea that her niece, Rhea, might somehow play a role in the king's future felt like a betrayal to Lyra's own dreams of grandeur. Lyra began plotting against Rhea, convinced that her niece's strange dreams were a sign of ambition and a desire for power that would interfere with her own children's chances of success. One evening, as the family sat around the dinner table, Lyra spoke in hushed tones to her children. She warned them that Rhea's dreams were more than just fantasies, they were dangerous. She told them that Rhea might be scheming to use her dreams to claim the throne for herself, and that they had to prevent her from interfering with their own paths to greatness. Rowan, Willow, and Ash were uneasy. They loved Rhea and had always thought of her as a sister, but their mother's words planted seeds of doubt in their minds. What if Rhea really was trying to take something from them? What if her strange dreams meant she was trying to fulfill a destiny that would exclude them? The tension between Rhea and her adoptive family began to rise. Rhea, oblivious to the growing resentment around her, continued to follow the mysterious guidance of her dreams. She believed that somehow, she was meant to play a role in the future of Avelia, but she couldn't yet understand how. As the day of the great gathering approached, Rhea found herself at a crossroads. Her dreams were becoming clearer, urging her to act, but she was unaware of the dark forces that were already at play around her. Would her destiny be fulfilled, or would her aunt's jealousy tear her family apart before she had the chance to discover her true purpose? The first day of the gathering. The grand gathering at the palace was unlike any event Avelia had ever witnessed. People from all corners of the kingdom arrived in great numbers, their faces full of hope and excitement. The palace courtyard was filled with the sounds of bustling crowds, as nobles, scholars, travelers, and villagers eagerly gathered, all with one goal in mind, to guess King Ola's middle name and secure the future of Avelia. Rhea, though caught up in the grand spectacle, couldn't shake the sense of disconnection that lingered in her heart. She had traveled to the capital city with her aunt, Lyra, and her cousins, and while the event was a grand celebration, Rhea felt like an outsider. The spell her aunt had placed on her still clouded her mind, and she walked through the palace halls as if in a daze, her thoughts clouded and fragmented. Her aunt's manipulation was still in full force, and the strange sensations that had once seemed like guidance now felt more like a distant memory, something that might never come true. Despite the festive atmosphere, Rhea felt a quiet isolation. Lyra was busy whispering about her own plans for Rowan, Willow, and Ash, ensuring that her children remained in the spotlight. As the gathering began, Rhea tried to focus on the task at hand, but the magic surrounding her made it impossible to think clearly. She knew she had to be part of something bigger, but the path was obscured, and the faces around her seemed more like blurry shadows than real people. The struggle for the name. Inside the great hall of the palace, the tension was palpable. King Ola, sitting upon his magnificent throne, appeared exhausted as the first guesses were made. One by one, people stepped forward, their voices trembling with excitement as they shouted names in an attempt to unravel the mystery of the king's elusive middle name. Some names were common, others based on ancient legends, and a few were wild guesses made in desperation. But none of them were correct. The king, though maintaining a regal composure, could not hide the growing anxiety in his eyes. He had hoped for a breakthrough, but as the hours stretched on, it became painfully clear that no one had come close to guessing his name. His hands gripped the arms of his throne tightly, his mind racing with concern. How much longer could he continue to hold his kingdom's future in the balance? Outside the hall, the crowds murmured restlessly. The prophecy was now more than just a myth, its weight was being felt by everyone in Avelia. King Ola had promised that the one who could guess his name would be rewarded with the highest honor. But now, the gathering seemed like an impossible task. Rhea watched as each person approached the king, each guess falling short. Her heart ached as she saw how desperately the king wanted to end the prophecy's curse. The weight of the situation was heavy, but for Rhea, it was even more complicated. Could she help? Could her strange, recurring dreams hold the key to the king's name? She had no answers, only the distant pull of something inside her that urged her to act. Rhea's struggle and revelation. As the day wore on, Rhea found herself standing near the back of the hall, feeling more and more disconnected from the unfolding events. The magic her aunt had placed on her seemed to deepen, fogging her thoughts and preventing her from acting on the feelings that had been growing inside her. She could barely focus on what was happening around her, and her body moved on autopilot, caught between a sense of purpose and a blurred reality. But something began to stir within her. As the crowd continued to guess names, something shifted in the air. The atmosphere seemed to grow heavier, more charged, as if the very magic of Avelia was responding to her presence. A sense of familiarity washed over Rhea. Her dreams, the dreams of wearing a crown and ruling the kingdom, seemed to be intertwined with what was happening right before her eyes. Could it be possible that these dreams were more than mere visions? Were they trying to guide her to something far more important? But doubt clouded her mind. She had never been the one to stand in the spotlight. She was only an orphan, a girl without a royal name or bloodline. How could someone like her have any part in the future of Avelia? She wanted to reach out, to speak the name that felt so close to her, but the spell her aunt had cast upon her kept her from speaking clearly, her thoughts muddled with confusion. Still, in the back of her mind, a flicker of realization began to grow. Perhaps the answer lay within her, the answer that had been handed down through generations, the answer hidden deep within the kingdom's ancient magic. But for now, she was stuck in a haze, unable to fully grasp the significance of her dreams and the truth that seemed to elude her at every turn. As the first day of the great gathering came to a close with no success, the pressure on King Ola became almost unbearable. The stakes were higher than ever, and with each passing moment, the tension in the hall grew. But in the shadows of the gathering, Rhea knew she was closer than ever to uncovering the truth, even if she didn't yet know how to unlock the magic that had been calling to her for so long. Lyra's plan. As the second day of the great gathering began, the excitement and anticipation surrounding the palace had only grown. People from every village, town, and corner of Avelia had gathered, still eager to guess King Ola's middle name and secure the kingdom's future. But amid the buzz of activity, Lyra, Rhea's adoptive aunt, had her own agenda. Lyra was a woman consumed by ambition. While her cousins, Rowan, Willow, and Ash, had been focused on the gathering, Lyra had grown anxious at the idea of Rhea's dreams potentially becoming a threat to her family's aspirations. Lyra saw Rhea's mysterious visions as something more dangerous, an obstacle standing between her children and the glory she so desired. Determined to keep her own family in the spotlight and away from Rhea's possible interference, Lyra devised a sinister plan to subdue her niece. She knew Rhea had been acting strangely since her dreams had begun, and the thought of Rhea gaining any recognition at the palace made Lyra furious. So, she had prepared a crimson scarf woven with powerful dark magic, a scarf that would cloud Rhea's thoughts, confusing her and ensuring she could not act on her destiny. With malicious intent, Lyra tied the scarf around Rhea's golden hair early that morning. The magic began to weave itself into Rhea's mind, making her feel disoriented and lost. Rhea's steps became slower, her thoughts heavier, and her once bright eyes grew dull. She moved through the gathering like a shadow, unable to make sense of the world around her. Her usual sense of purpose was now buried under the weight of the dark magic Lyra had placed upon her. Rhea's transformation. As Rhea stumbled through the palace corridors, the magic Lyra had cast continued to warp her perception. Rhea was a mere puppet, her thoughts fragmented and her dreams out of reach. But Lyra was not done yet. She had something more terrible in store for Rhea, a final act to seal her fate. After a long day of confusion and helplessness, Lyra led Rhea to a secluded part of the palace. With a cold smile, she held up a vial of dark liquid, a vile potion that would bind Rhea's fate to something far worse than confusion. Lyra's hands shook with excitement as she poured the contents of the vial over Rhea's head. The potion seeped into Rhea's skin, and within moments, the transformation began. To Lyra's satisfaction, Rhea's body began to contort and shift. The magic was working in a way Lyra hadn't anticipated. Rhea was no longer just clouded in mind. She was changing into something else entirely. The beautiful, kind-hearted girl who had once dreamed of ruling Avelia was now becoming something legendary and terrifying. Her limbs shortened and hardened, her smooth skin turned into scaly armor, and her once graceful body became the slithering form of a serpent. A green snake now coiled on the floor where Rhea had once stood. Her golden hair was gone, replaced by a sleek, serpentine head. The snake's dark eyes still held traces of Rhea's humanity, but her voice was now only a raspy hiss, barely recognizable as the young woman she once was. Rhea's anguish. As Rhea looked down at her new form, a wave of anguish consumed her. She could still feel the echo of her human self, the dreams of royalty, the golden crown, the throne room, but it was all slipping away. Her body had been transformed into something terrifying, a creature of darkness and fear. She had always longed for a connection to the royal bloodline, for a chance to fulfill the destiny shown to her in her dreams. But now, trapped in this reptilian form, she could barely remember the face of the woman she once was. Her dreams of ruling Avelia, of wearing a crown, now felt distant. She was no longer the queen she had seen in her visions. She was a snake, a creature stripped of everything that had once been hers. Rhea let out a mournful hiss, the last remnants of her humanity still alive in her heart, but lost in the overwhelming transformation. The prophecy, the curse, and her aunt's jealousy had all conspired against her, robbing her of her future and leaving her with nothing but the instinct to survive. Rhea slithered helplessly through the palace halls, her mind clouded with confusion, longing for the life she had once dreamed of. The kingdom's future at risk. Back in the palace, the great gathering continued, and King Ola was growing more desperate by the hour. As each day passed without the correct guess, his fear deepened. Avelia's future seemed uncertain, and the weight of the prophecy pressed heavily upon his shoulders. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. If his true name was not guessed soon, the kingdom might face the dire consequences foretold in the ancient texts. Despite his outward calm, King Ola's eyes betrayed his inner turmoil. The people gathered before him, hoping to guess his middle name, could not see the pain and worry etched into the king's face. Each passing hour felt like a burden, and King Ola began to fear that the fate of Avelia might indeed be sealed by the prophecy. Meanwhile, Lyra was filled with quiet satisfaction. Her scheme was working, and Rhea, once a potential rival to her family's ambitions, was now nothing more than a bewildered, powerless creature. Lyra knew that her family's path to power was now clear, and that nothing could stop her from seeing her children rise to greatness. But unbeknownst to Lyra, Rhea's transformation was not the end of her journey. Though trapped in the form of a serpent, Rhea's human spirit still burned within her. The dreams that had once guided her would not be so easily erased. And, as the days passed, Rhea began to sense that her true purpose was far from finished. The kingdom's future and Rhea's destiny were now more intertwined than ever before. Rhea's journey as a snake. Rhea's transformation into a serpent had left her confused and disoriented, but her human determination had not vanished. Although trapped in a body so alien to her, Rhea's spirit remained strong. The dreams that once guided her had not gone away, they burned fiercely inside her, driving her forward despite the overwhelming changes in her appearance. As she slithered through the palace corridors, her sleek, green-scaled body gliding across the cool stone floors, Rhea's mind clung desperately to the memory of her past self. She could still remember the crown upon her head, the robes of royalty draping elegantly over her shoulders, and the throne that had once felt within her reach. Now, those memories felt like fragments of a distant life, far removed from the creature she had become. Yet, despite her new form, Rhea felt an undeniable purpose stirring within her. She had to find answers. She had to understand why she had been cursed and what part she played in the fate of Avelia. The path was unclear, and the walls of the palace seemed like an endless maze, but Rhea's instincts led her onward. Her destiny was still in motion even if she couldn't yet grasp its shape. A mysterious encounter. As Rhea slithered through a quiet corridor, her senses were drawn to a soft sound, the gentle scraping of a broom on stone. Her forked tongue flicked the air, tasting the scent of dust and herbs. She followed the scent until she came upon a small, dimly lit room. There, in the far corner, was a young servant girl hunched over a dustpan, sweeping the floor. The girl was no older than 12 or 13, with dirty hands and a plain brown dress. She hummed a melancholic tune as she walked, unaware of the serpent that had silently entered the room. Rhea's dark eyes locked onto the girl, and despite her fearsome appearance, the servant girl couldn't help but feel a strange pull to the creature before her. The young girl's heart raced as she caught sight of the glowing green eyes of the snake, its scales glistening under the flickering torchlight. But instead of fleeing in terror, something about Rhea made her pause. She felt an inexplicable sense of curiosity, as if there was more to this snake than met the eye. The girl stepped back slowly, her wide eyes reflecting a mix of fear and wonder. Rhea, in that moment, felt a surge of something powerful, a recognition. This girl, in her humble state, held an important place in the unfolding drama of Avelia's fate. Her purpose here was tied to Rhea's own journey, and the girl seemed to be a bridge between the prophecy and Rhea's path. Rhea's message. Just as the servant girl began to step back further, an eerie stillness enveloped the room. The air became thick with magic, and a subtle glow surrounded Rhea as if the very essence of Avelia's magic was responding to her. Despite being trapped in the body of a snake, something deep within Rhea began to stir, a powerful force that seemed to override the limitations of her new form. In a mystical moment, Rhea's eyes flashed brightly as she gathered the remnants of her human consciousness. Her voice, though still raspy and alien, emerged from her serpentine form. The servant girl's eyes widened in disbelief as a melodic voice, one that carried the weight of prophecy, spoke through the snake's body. I dreamed a dream of a gilded crown. Avelia's fate I could not turn down. Spirits shrouded in greatest plight. Conceal the king's name, his realm's light. I was once the maiden, beauty ripped away. Serpent coils in snare, destiny at bay. My quest remains to cure this blight, and unlock the truth of monarchic right. A slithered sibilance, my ally seeks. A servant's pure heart, the key piece speaks. Open your soul to my noble plea. Rhea's triumph or vile prophecy. The servant girl, standing frozen, felt the words of the prophecy echo deep within her soul. Rhea's voice was not just a message, it was a call to action. The girl realized with a sudden clarity that her role in this mystery was much greater than she had ever imagined. The fate of Avelia now rested on both her and the transformed Rhea. With a trembling hand, the servant girl dropped the broom and kneeled before the serpent, her eyes wide with understanding. She didn't know what exactly was happening, but the message was clear: Rhea was not just a snake, she was a guide. Rhea's eyes softened as the snake's body relaxed, a sense of relief washing over her. The servant girl, now fully aware of her part in this unfolding tale, looked up at the serpent with newfound resolve. I will help you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I don't understand it all, but I will help you fulfill your destiny. The servant girl's role. In the days following Rhea's strange encounter with the servant girl, the bond between them grew stronger. The girl, whose name was Lina, had felt a calling that she couldn't explain. Ever since she had met Rhea, something deep inside her heart told her that her life had a greater purpose, one that was now inextricably linked to Rhea and the fate of Avelia. Lina became Rhea's closest confidant and ally. Despite the fear and confusion she had initially felt, she now understood that Rhea's transformation was not just a punishment, it was a key to something far more important. Together, they navigated the palace, slipping past guards and finding hidden corridors, all while Rhea's mind remained focused on the task at hand, uncovering the truth behind the king's secret middle name. Every night, Rhea's dreams grew more intense, and the fragments of her past life, the crown, the throne, the kingdom, came into sharper focus. As Rhea's human memories and her serpentine instincts began to intertwine, Lina noticed that the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. The key to breaking the prophecy and ensuring Avelia's future was locked within Heir's destiny, and it was through her that the kingdom's salvation would be found. The hidden truth of the name. Through their quiet investigations, Heir and Lina discovered something extraordinary. King Ola's middle name was not simply a name, it was a magical symbol, a word of great power that held the kingdom's past, present, and future in balance. The name itself had been concealed for centuries, not because of its danger, but because it was the only way to keep Avelia safe from the ancient curse foretold in the prophecy. Heir, despite her transformation, began to sense the magic that connected the name to the kingdom's survival. As she slithered through the palace corridors with Lina by her side, her memories became clearer, and the ancient rituals that had long been forgotten started to reveal themselves. The name was tied to the gods themselves, a gift from the heavens that had the power to shift Avelia's fate, but only if spoken at the right moment. With Lina's help, Heir uncovered the final piece of the puzzle. The name was hidden in plain sight, it was tied to the royal bloodline and could only be revealed when the true heir had come of age. This meant that King Ola's future and Avelia's survival were inextricably tied to Heir, the one who had the unique ability to bring the curse to an end. But there was one crucial step left. Heir needed to reveal the name to the king, and only then would the prophecy be broken. Heir's return to the king. In a moment of divine intervention, Heir, guided by her dreams and the magic that surged within her, made her way back to the throne room where King Ola waited, surrounded by anxious courtiers. Despite her appearance as a snake, Heir felt more connected to her human self than ever before. She was no longer just an orphan girl or a transformed creature, she was the key to saving Avelia. Lina, standing by her side, felt a mixture of awe and fear as Heir approached the king. The halls were filled with whispers, and the nobles stared in astonishment as the serpent made its way to the throne. But when Heir reached King Ola, she could feel the deep magical bond between them. It was the moment the kingdom had been waiting for. Heir's eyes locked with the king's, and in a voice that resonated through the room, Heir spoke the name, the ancient word that would break the curse and ensure the kingdom's future. It was a name that had been hidden by the gods for generations, one that only the true heir could reveal. As the words left her mouth, the palace seemed to pulse with power, the prophecy had been fulfilled. King Ola's face softened, a sense of relief washing over him as the magical aura in the room began to settle. With a deep breath, he finally understood the truth of the prophecy and the magic that had bound Avelia's fate. His eyes filled with gratitude as he turned to Heir, the true heir to the throne. A new beginning for Avelia. With the prophecy broken and the curse lifted, Avelia was saved. The dark cloud that had hung over the kingdom for generations had been lifted, and the people celebrated with joy and relief. The streets of the capital were filled with music, dancing, and the laughter of children, for the future of Avelia was now secure. King Ola, forever grateful to Heir for her role in breaking the curse, honored her in a way no one could have ever imagined. Heir, though forever changed by her transformation, was hailed as a hero. The people of Avelia recognized her as the one who had saved the kingdom from the brink of disaster, and she was celebrated as the true heir who had rewritten the future. In the days that followed, Heir was given a new title, the Guardian of Avelia, the one who would watch over the kingdom for generations to come. Though her body had been altered, her spirit had remained strong, and her connection to the royal bloodline was now undeniable. Heir's dreams of royalty had finally come true, not as a queen who ruled from a throne, but as a guardian and protector of Avelia's future. Her journey, once clouded by confusion and doubt, had led her to become the key to Avelia's survival. With the prophecy broken and Avelia saved, Heir's journey had come full circle. She had proven that even the most unlikely hero could change the course of history, and her story would be passed down through generations as a tale of courage, destiny, and the power of magic. The kingdom was now reborn, and its people would forever remember the serpent who saved them all.